Pablo, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Thank you for the retweet as well, brother. Joe, good to see you as well. Evening, how you doing? My day was busy. How's your day, Joe? Hope it was great. Hey, brother Miles, the CMF. Comatose, good to see you as well. How you doing? Comatose, how you been? How's things? Evening, Miles, how are you tonight? I'm doing great, autistic. How's your day been? How's your night? Good afternoon, Miles and CMF family. Good to see you. Carlos, good to see you as well. How you doing? As you can tell, the viewer count has still not been fixed by Restream. It shows that there are 5 people watching, but there isn't 5 people watching. There's a lot more than 5 people watching, but Restream hasn't still fixed the viewer count. I really do need to contact them. I'm going to contact them after this live and let them know that their viewer count is been giving out false viewer count for the past 4 live shows we've done. Free and Weber, good to see you as well. Evening, how you doing? Good day, Miles. Mike, good to see you as well. How you doing? How you been? Good evening, brother. Good evening, Miles, the CMF. Bull XRP, good to see you as well. How you doing? Carlos, good afternoon. Good to see you as well. How you doing? Hello, Miles. Hope you're well. T, good to see you as well. How you doing? Hope you're well too, brother. My day was quite boring as usual. Well, sometimes boring days are rest days, you could pretty much call them. Now, welcome to the CMF Live. If you're watching this for the first time ever, the CMF stands for Crypto Miles Family. My name is Miles. You can tune to this live Monday to Friday, 10 p.m. London time onwards for the most recent news regarding cryptocurrencies, CBDCs, AI, politics, regulations, pretty much vital information for you to know about regarding the world completely transforming into a digital space. We also do Q&As in this live as well, which means if you have any questions, put it down in the comment section. More than happy to help you out. The disclaimer of this live, as always, is not financial advice, not political advice, and whatever I say is only for entertainment purposes. Now, on tonight's live, we have a mixture of news to go through, as usual, some government news to go through, some announcement news to go through, some partnership news to go through, and also some Ripple news to go through towards the end of the live. Now, before we go through the first news on tonight's live, let's go through the comment section first before we do go for any sort of news. And the first news we are going to be covering is a staggering $5 billion Bitcoin acquisition strategy movement that's coming about from another essentially NASDAQ listed company, which is an incredible amount of investment, to be fairly honest. But before we go through that, let's go start the comment section first. And I also want to say thank you so much to everybody from the CMF who has already liked and retweeted this live if you're watching this on X. And thanks so much to everyone who's watching this on YouTube right now who's also liked and essentially put a comment after the live as well. If you haven't liked or retweeted CMF members, please like and please retweet the live show if you're watching on X, and just like if you're watching on YouTube. Now, let's go through the comment section first before we go through the first news. Good evening, Miles. How are you? I'm doing great. Callie, good to see you. How you're doing? Do you have any news about Near Protocol? I don't have any major announcements regarding Near Protocol, to be fairly honest. But here's the first news on tonight's live, which is a staggering amount of money that's about to be invested in the Bitcoin. Kindly MD plans a $5 billion Bitcoin acquisition strategy. The NASDAQ-listed Kindly MD plans to raise $5 billion through equity to purchase Bitcoin, aiming to become a major holder in healthcare sector's treasury essentially shift. Kindly MD's $5 billion Bitcoin initiative may influence investor attitudes as well and market behavior, reflecting a significant essentially shift in corporate cryptocurrency adoptions within the traditional sector. It's definitely going to bring a lot of confidence towards the blockchain space and essentially obviously Bitcoin, because that's what they're investing into. Kindly MD, a NASDAQ-listed healthcare company, has announced today $5 billion essentially equity raise. The fund will be used to purchase Bitcoin, aiming to acquire up to 1 million Bitcoins. This strategy shift could transform its financial strategy and market position. The initiative is led by David Bailey, the CEO of Kindly MD. Known for essentially his pro-Bitcoin stance, Bailey intends to blend healthcare revenues with Bitcoin-centric treasuries, and it plans to essentially involve it at the market shares sales essentially via TD Securities and Cantor Fixed Corp. Also, the announcement caused a significant drop in Kindly MD's share price. Oddly enough, they made a huge announcement, $5 billion purchase of Bitcoin over time, 1 million Bitcoin tokens. That should have been seen as positive for their share price. Ironically, it did the reversal, reflecting investor skepticism. It seems like their investors are not fond of the idea of this healthcare company going towards Bitcoin with such a huge, essentially, acquisition. Such a move in the healthcare sector is extremely rare, raising questions about the company's future trajectory and investor confidence. Is essentially in the sense of, is this a healthcare company or is this a fintech company now? Historically, essentially, firms like MicroStrategy have seen their share volatility after large Bitcoin acquisitions. Kindly MD's essentially actions might prompt similar reactions, impacting essentially its position as a healthcare-focused entity and altering essentially its treasury risk profile. Now, this strategy could lead to substantial changes in Bitcoin's market liquidity. Analysts might essentially compare this move to historical precedents, viewing it essentially as a major market signal for buy purchase from a non-tech firm. Essentially, the Bitcoin supply mechanisms might see shifts if other firms also follow in suit. David Bailey, chair and CEO of Kindly MD, said in his own words, "It will take us a while to build the necessary liquidity to complete essentially this program, but it will be critical to as we execute our strategy." Also, to add on top of that, Stride Funds, led by Matt Cole, details essentially a plan to allocate $700 million to Bitcoin, also following the company's public offering. This marks essentially an ambitious leap for the firm in the cryptocurrency sector. So not just essentially Kindly MD trying to raise $5 billion to buy Bitcoin and 1 million Bitcoin tokens. We also have another company, essentially Stride Funds, who wants to invest up to $700 million into Bitcoin, supporting conventional essentially investment routes. CEO Matt Cole is spearheading this transformation, prioritizing Bitcoin in his strategic essentially portfolio. Strive's venture into this realm highlights a broader acceptance of digital essentially currencies in institutional circles. This move signals a strong bet essentially on Bitcoin's future as a core asset and diversified risk managed portfolios, said Matt Cole, the CEO of Stride Funds. This decision is poised to have influential impact on Bitcoin's markets, potentially signaling increased institutional acceptance. The allocation of such substantial essentially amounts to Bitcoin could also catalyze the price movements and evaluate the market sentiment. Financially, this move by Strive highlights a risk-managed approach, employing essentially a phased purchasing strategy to prevent market volatility. This underscores the growing integration of Bitcoin into institutional portfolios, as seen essentially in similar strategies by other financial entities like MicroStrategy. Long-term effects could influence rippling changes across financial markets, solidifying Bitcoin's role as a core essentially asset. Historical events suggest potential price surges for Bitcoin amidst the increased institutional involvements. Regulatory landscapes might shift as governments react to increasing institutional adoption. Data and historical trends also underscore this investment's capacity to influence market dynamics profoundly. These moves set to influence market dynamics by potentially increasing Bitcoin's institutional adoption, impacting price trends and essentially liquidity in the broader cryptocurrency sector. Two major firms, both public, coming out and saying one is trying to raise $5 billion to purchase essentially Bitcoin. The other is just trying to raise essentially $700 million to buy Bitcoin, both publicly listed companies. One is inside the healthcare sector, essentially. One is just a portfolio company. Major news, to be fairly honest. One of their stocks has also been impacted, not positively, negatively, regarding them trying to raise $5 billion on Bitcoin purchases. Sorry about that, everyone. But in either way, it's going to add liquidity towards the market space. It's a positive news for the crypto space. It brings more eyes inside the crypto space. So it should be seen as positive news, to be fairly honest. Now, on that idea of essentially of Bitcoin and so many institutions coming forward, Bitwise has just had a new prediction on where they see Bitcoin's price point in the year 2035. So, according to Bitwise's asset management, they've released a new report forecasting where Bitcoin could surge to $1.3 million by 2035, driven by institutional demand and limited supply. This projection underscores Bitcoin's evolving role as a core institutional asset, potentially outperforming traditional options like stocks and gold, with a projected 28.3% annual growth rate. Bitwise has released a report estimating Bitcoin's price to hit $1.3 million by 2035. This prediction assumes sustained institutional interest and the cap on Bitcoin supply. The base case essentially essentially bullish and bearish scenarios suggest a wide range of possible outcomes for Bitcoin's price trajectory going forward. This essentially supply of Bitcoin combined with the continued demand growth is the single most important driver of our long-term essentially assumptions, said Matt Hugan, the chief investment essentially officer at Bitwise Asset Management. Essentially, community discussions reflects varied sentiments towards Bitwise's recent new forecast today, with forums like Twitter and Reddit debating its feasibility, while the report draws attention and lacks immediate reactions from regulatory bodies or major financial institutions, highlighting essentially Bitcoin's evolving status as an institutional asset. Bitwise's scenario essentially analysis suggests a potential for Bitcoin's value to soar almost 26 times its current valuation if the bullish scenario essentially materializes by 2035. Bitcoin's current price essentially stands at around, at the time of this article, $112,614.63, with a market cap of $2.24 trillion and a market dominance of 57.61% according to CMC. Recent trading patterns show Bitcoin's price change at 0.23% in the last 24 hours and a 7.51% increase over the past 90 days. So two major firms are thinking about investing in Bitcoin, one up to $700 million, the other up to raising up to $5 billion. And on top of that, Bitwise releases a new report today suggesting that Bitcoin could be possibly reaching $1.35 million essentially by 2035. Is it possible for Bitcoin to reach those types of price points by 2035? Anything's possible, to be fairly honest. As I always like to say, consider variable change. Now, the biggest news that's going around inside the crypto space that I feel like I need to weigh in my opinion is the news that I read out yesterday on this live, which was regarding the US Commerce debt for on-chain essentially data, where essentially the US Department of Commerce is thinking about bringing their data on essentially the blockchain space. They never announced their blockchains yesterday, but today we got the news from essentially Bloomberg and essentially some other firms of which blockchains are involved. Now, everybody's very focused on only one particular blockchain from the announcement, which was Chainlink. But there are other blockchains involved. Bitcoin is also involved. Solana's also involved. Chainlink is involved. Python network is involved. Altogether, it's about 9 blockchains. Tron is also involved. 9 blockchains are involved in this announcement of essentially these blockchains being chosen for different roles in terms of data storage. Now, in a major development for blockchain and data transparency, Chainlink and 9 other blockchains has officially been partnered with the US Department of Commerce to bring verified macroeconomic data on chain. A lot of people, when they saw this news, some people asked the question of, essentially, why is XRP not involved? And others decided to mock XRP of why it's not involved in this major announcement. I just want to make one thing very clear to everybody. XRP was not designed technically for macroeconomic data storage. It was designed for finance. It was designed for essentially money transfers. It wasn't really designed for data storage. Now, is this also essentially this data storage, is it going to have positive impacts on these chains? Yes. Is it going to be bringing a lot of money to the table? Probably not. It's going to have indirect value on the price point of Chainlink, essentially, and Solana, and Tron, and Python. It's going to have indirect value on them because their names have been mentioned inside of this major government data storage, essentially, scenario. But is it going to have direct value on the chain? No, because no money is moving about. It's just data, essentially. So it's going to, in most cases, if it works out really bad, it's going to congest the network. Solana probably get congested first out of everyone, but it's no money involved whatsoever. Just want to make this very clear to everybody, because a lot of people are misinforming a lot of people inside the crypto space right now, especially X, where people are mocking XRP for not being involved. I'll be honest, I don't want the words XRP and data storage in the same sentence. I want the words XRP and bank in the same sentence. XRP and money. XRP essentially and institutions, XRP and government money, XRP and Fed in the same sentence, not XRP and data storage in the same sentence, because this adds indirect value, not direct value in any sort of a way, which means indirect value is hype, where there's going to be a lot of hype on Chainlink, Solana, Tron, Python, Bitcoin, Ethereum because of this news, but by next week, everybody will forget about this. And it's going to add zero value to their chains directly, but indirectly, because of hype and speculation, the value will be there. but there's no direct value whatsoever. It's just data storage. Nobody's moving around money, just data storage. So the US Commerce Department, essentially statistical agencies such as the Bureau of Economic Analysis, which we discussed yesterday, and essentially Census of Bureau, provide critical economic insights. With this partnership, these metrics will be securely and verifiably delivered to blockchains and ecosystems via Chainlink's decentralized or coral network. This advancement allows smart contracts to interact with real-world data without relying on centralized sources. Developers, analysis, essentially in DeFi, insurance, and other sectors can now build tools and applications that respond in real-time, trustworthy government data. This is extremely positive news, to be fairly honest. No doubt about it. It's extremely positive news. It adds credibility towards blockchains, which is brilliant to watch. This collaboration highlights the growing trust between blockchain networks and government institutions. These 9 blockchains, known for their essentially secure or coral infrastructure, will help ensure that the on-chain version of macroeconomic data are tamper-proof and publicly auditable. For the DeFi industry, this means the possibility of more advanced and data-driven products. Imagine essentially lending protocols adjusting interest rates based on live essentially inflation numbers, or prediction markers tracking jobless claims in real time. This real-world connection gives blockchain applications a much more stronger foothold on the global essentially census. Moreover, this sets a precedent for future partnerships between public institutions and blockchain networks. It showcases how decentralized systems can coexist with traditional data sources to bring more transparency, automation, and efficiency to both sectors. As Web3 expands, such integrating official government data helps bridge the gap between essentially these market spaces. Chainlink's collaboration with the Commerce Department signals a shift towards a more transparent interoperability system. This could also drive greater institutional confidence towards blockchain technologies, leading to the broader adoption across sectors. With accurate real-time data now accessible on-chain, essentially expect a wave of innovation in the smart contracts development, data analysis, and decentralized finance. Some of the leading US cryptocurrency exchanges, including Coinbase and Gemini, also helped the Commerce Department to implement the change. Notably, the data is being published directly on blockchain networks with the help of prominent coral provider Chainlink. So yeah, I just want to make that very clear to everybody, because I've seen a lot of posts on X today, which I'm not going to be naming the people. One of them was actually a very famous person. He's a moron, but he's a famous person and well known for scamming his audience. But nonetheless, he put a comment out saying, "Who do you think is missing from this list?" as if to mock the XRP ledger. There is no money involved in this whatsoever. The only thing that's involved in this essentially is the speculation and hype between these tokens. By next week, we'll move on to a different set of news, and everybody will forget about this data storage scenario on these blockchains. I've said this before, and I'll say it again a million times. XRP in its own field, when it comes to payments, it's top of the range. When it comes to data, Web3, AI, gaming, there are other blockchains out there. But when it comes to finance, XRP takes the rankings #1 as always. Data, Web3, AI, any of those actually gaming fields, essentially it's not the areas that XRP operates within, let's just say. But this, on the other side of the spectrum, amazing news, incredible news, adds credibility towards blockchain, showing that governments essentially using blockchain technology is a brilliant idea. I'll give you another example as well. Cardano was chosen for data storage for Interpol about last year. Actually, it was the beginning of this year. One second, everyone. The comment section logged me out again. Restream is becoming... Sorry, everyone. Okay, the comment section is back. I don't see anybody else's comments at all. So if you did put a question down, please put it back inside the comment section, because all the comments have disappeared. This only happens like once a while in the live shows. I don't really know what's happening with Restream. We're having comment section situations, and the viewer count is still showing 13 people, even though there are a lot more than 13 people watching right now. But anyways, to give you another example, Cardano last year, or the beginning of this year, was chosen to be used as data storage by the police department of Dubai. And then it was chosen to be used as data storage for Interpol, which is massive. Interpol using Cardano for data storage. Did it really help the price of Cardano? No. Has everybody forgotten about that? Yes. Has everybody moved on? Yes. Data doesn't bring money. What does bring money to the table is tokenization and money transfers. And XRP takes the rankings in finance, not data. Now, data storage to be more exact. I just asked why not XRP Ledger, but you answered it. Oh, okay. Let's go, Shelly. Good to see you as well. How you doing? Like and repost, folks. Let's go, Joe. I could also see someone put a comment down in the little section. Facts regarding XRP and banks, not data storage, and put facts. Let's go. Who said that? Ray. Let's go, Ray. Sorry about that, everyone. Why the comment section disappeared, but the comment section is back now. I can see everybody's comments from Shelly's comment of I asked why not XRP Ledger, but you answered it. From that comment onwards, I can see everyone's comments. Like and repost, folks. Let's go. Joe, hi, Miles and CMF family. Let's go for facts news. Good to see you guys. Carl, good to see you as well. How you doing? Now, Ethereum and the founder, Vitalik Buterin, came out with an interesting piece of essentially news, which is this. Ethereum founder Vitalik Buterin gives dates essentially for potential deadly threat facing cryptocurrencies. Ethereum's essentially founder Vitalik Buterin did an interview where he talked about how there could be possible major implementations down the road for certain cryptocurrencies in a quantum world where they could become compromised. So here it is. Vitalik Buterin, the founder of Ethereum, has made a remarkable assessment of the potential impacts of quantum computers on modern essential cryptographies. Buterin essentially stated that he sees a 20% probability of this technology being able to break current encryption methods by 2030. In his statements, Buterin essentially touched on the magnitude of the threat of quantum computers posing on this timeline. He said, looking at the prediction, platforms like essentially Metaculus, it's estimated that quantum computers will be powerful enough to break cryptography between 2030 and 2035. There's a lot of speculation out there right now. Some companies claim to be developing quantum computers, but in reality, they're essentially quantum diabetics computers that don't even come close to breaking essentially cryptography. Buterin also stated that the Ethereum ecosystem is preparing for a quantum threat. Justin Drake is working on quantum resistant signatures. Storks are already quantum resistant. Great progress is being made in this area, and I'm optimistic that Ethereum can adapt. Ledger CTO Charles also, while acknowledging the magnitude of the risk, stated that he sees the probability as lower. Vitalik predicts a 20% chance, but he seems to essentially lower to me. The crucial point isn't the exact probability. NIST has mandated a transition to post-quantum essential cryptography between 2030 and 2035. We have the necessary tools, but the key is which standards will be implemented essentially and implemented through on. This is critical not only for blockchains, but also defense, banking, telecom, and identity systems. Facts. Although essentially he stated that blockchains may face difficulties in the adoption essentially process due to decentralized structures, he pointed out that the sector's capacity to move quickly. There is no reason to panic. We just need to work in a focused manner. There's a few things I want to point out that Vitalik Buterin said, which are, in my point of view, absolute facts. So those are things that I don't say in the same sentence with Vitalik Buterin and facts, but he made some great points. One point essentially he made was that essentially Vitalik Buterin has been working, with his own team on the Ethereum chain to make it quantum resistant. And I said the same thing a while ago. I said crypto projects that could become compromised in a quantum world are going to be the ones that don't have a foundation standing behind them. In other words, Ethereum is going to be protected in a quantum world because Vitalik Buterin and his team are going to make sure of that. XRP Ledger is going to be protected in a quantum essentially world because Ripple is going to make sure that the XRP Ledger is protected in that scenario. AVAX is going to make their chain essentially secure in that sense as well. So is Solana Foundation. So is essentially Cardano's essentially foundation going to make sure their chain essentially is protected in that scenario. All of these blockchains that have something or someone standing behind them are definitely going to make sure that they're essentially protected in a way. Remember how everybody said it's a terrible idea that Ripple is behind the XRP? Not everyone, but some people. People say it's it's a terrible idea that Ripple is standing behind the XRP ledger because it makes it centralized and so on, even though it's not. But there are always elements of centralization in the entire blockchain space. But scenarios like that of a quantum world doesn't seem so bad now, does it? Where you have Ripple protecting the XRP ledger, Vitalik Buterin and his team protecting Ethereum, AVAX protecting their chain, Solana Foundation protecting their chain, Cardano essentially protecting their chain. So you see the point I'm trying to make. He made a great point on that, and he followed that point by essentially saying that decentralized structures, essentially cryptocurrency projects that have nobody standing behind them, referencing to Bitcoin, you could say, are the ones that are going to be impacted the most. Because for those particular chains, everybody who essentially operates on the Bitcoin network, controls the nodes and so on, would have to have some sort of a point of view. And everybody has to agree, or the majority has to agree on Bitcoin's network for something to change on Bitcoin's network. So if you can't get everybody on the same page, then it might be too late and we might reach a quantum world before Bitcoin's chain is protected. But on the other hand, Vitalik and his team are making sure that stock, essentially Ethereum, is protected in a quantum world. Ripple is making sure the XRP ledger is protected, and so on. But on chains like Bitcoin, where everybody has to have an opinion before anything can get across, unless everybody's on the same page, which is difficult to do in the real world, then it might be too late. And it goes back to something a very profound analytics person essentially, gave his perspective on that matter a while ago, about 2 months ago, where he gave his perspective that, and he was essentially, if I'm not mistaken, from Bitwise's team research, which I'm not sure on that one, Bitwise team research or JP Morgan's essentially perspective on that matter, but they said that it's going to get very difficult, and that the wallets that will be mostly affected are the doormat wallets on Bitcoin's network. They will be emptied out in a quantum essentially world, and that's a substantial amount of Bitcoin will be compromised in that sense. And it's only because Bitcoin's network operates in a way where a lot of people have a voice, everybody has to agree on the same thing before anything gets implemented. Doesn't seem like bad now that essentially you see that Ethereum is protected by Vitalik, Ripple essentially is protecting XRP ledger, AVAX is protecting their own chain, Cardano is protecting their own chain. Who's protecting Bitcoin? Well, the people that operate the network. And it only works if they're all on the same page. So that is what Vitalik Buterin was referencing to when he mentioned the words of, what about the other chains, the decentralized, the fully decentralized ones in his eyes? How are they going to be protected? He doesn't know. Now, moving on to the next news on tonight's live. South Korea. First Bitcoin treasury launches. Before we talk about that, let's go inside the comment section first. As I said previously, this is live, which means if you do have any questions or statements, put it outside the comment section. More than happy to help you out. So let's see where we're at inside the comment section first. Carl, good to see you. How you doing? Even Miles of CMF, Davey, good to see you. How you doing? So you're saying I need to get rid of my donkey and camel tokens before quantum computing. Well, Joe, you have time until 2030 to 2035 for quantum computing to kick in. So you still have a lot of time to go. Good day, CMF. Christopher, good to see you. How you doing? Now, South Korea, backed by $40 million in capital. The initiative underscores a growing interest in Bitcoin among Asian firms. At the Bitcoin Asia 2025 event, Paul Lee, the co-founder and managing partner of Lobo Ventures, revealed that BitPlanet will deploy $40 million into Bitcoin as a part of its treasury strategy. So a few firms coming together in South Korea deciding to invest into Bitcoin, creating some sort of a portfolio. The company will emerge after essentially from rebranding of the SGA, a co-stack listed system integrator, following a 62% acquisition by Lee Investor. The funds, he confirmed, will be allocated immediately upon launch. Lee stressed that the move was made without debt financing, giving BitPlanet what he called a streamlined financial structure and flexibility to expand without leverage, essentially risks. The transition from SGA to BitPlanet marks a essentially pivot towards digital asset management and institutional essentially custody solutions. Asia Strategy Partners, now the largest shareholder and expected to guide the company's treasury operations and help develop new Bitcoin-based financial products. SGA had already gained attention for holding BTC in its corporate treasury, but the new entity aims to scale that approach into a global model for institutional adoption. BitPlanet's launch adds essentially to a wave of corporate Bitcoin activities in the region. In July, for example, the Nasdaq-listed K-Wave Media secured $1 billion to establish its own Bitcoin treasury in South Korea, with half of the funds provided through a financing agreement with Asan Funds. Meanwhile, the Japanese firm Metaplanet has also continued to aggressively expand its holdings, announcing plans to essentially this week to raise $881 million to purchase additional Bitcoins. Traditionally, South Korean blockchain firms have leaned towards XRP-linked financial products, but recent developments suggest a growing appetite for Bitcoin-focused treasury solutions, and analysts believe BitPlanet's entry could set the stage for South Korea to become a major hub for institutional Bitcoin adoption. So a few firms in South Korea, Bitcoin Asia Week event, made the announcement $40 million is being raised to invest into a Bitcoin portfolio for these firms. Brilliant news on that sense. I mean, adds credibility towards the space. Even though 2030 to 2035 is quantum wild. Now, JP Morgan, the man that runs JP Morgan, there was a time and day where he hated Bitcoin, despised Bitcoin, even went in front of senators and said, let me arrest them, anybody that's in Bitcoin. Yesterday, and the day before, JP Morgan is making some interesting announcements. Today, he made a similar announcement through essentially their analysts. But, here it is. So I recently ran out of news to everybody that JP Morgan essentially has said it's too cheap. Bitcoin is too cheap for what it is. Ironically, the same JP Morgan who hated Bitcoin and said everybody who owns Bitcoin is a criminal, and then started liking altcoins and now somehow telling everybody Bitcoin is too cheap. Now they've decided to go a different route. Now they're saying Bitcoin is too cheap compared to gold. So this is what's come out today. Wall Street Bank, JP Morgan says Bitcoin is trading too cheap relative to gold as its volatility falls to historical lows. In a research report published today from JP Morgan, the bank's analyst stated that a volatility-adjusted basis, Bitcoin is undervalued by around $16,000 versus gold, suggesting room for upside. The report said Bitcoin's 6-month rolling volatility has fallen from almost 60% at the start of this year to about 30% now. This is lowest reading essentially ever recorded. It also means that Bitcoin is now only twice as volatile as gold, which is the smallest gap ever seen between the two. According to JP Morgan's analysts, this drop makes essentially Bitcoin look more appealing for investors, especially for those building essentially large portfolios. The bank said that the volatility-adjusted basis of Bitcoin's market value would need to rise about 13% to be in line with gold's $5 trillion essentially worth of private investments. That will put a fair price of Bitcoin at around $126,000, which is far above today's market level, which is currently holds steady at $112,000, according to data from CoinMarketCap, CMC. Bitcoin's fair value sits around $126,000, said Nicholas, the managing director at JP Morgan. And he said this in an interview. And he also went on to say, yes, this is the upside we highlighted in our note, which we envisage that to be reached by the year's end. The bank linked the fall in volatility to a sharp increase in the purchases by corporate treasuries. According to the bank, essentially, the companies now hold more than 6% of Bitcoin's total supply. The analysts compared this pattern to the way central banks reduced swings in bond markets after the 2008 crisis by buying assets and holding them for long periods of time. JP Morgan also noted that passive inflows are helping Bitcoin. This is happening as more companies that hold Bitcoin are added to global stock indexes. There is a tremendous amount of public companies adding Bitcoin or creating some sort of a Bitcoin portfolio, but the research has showed that the majority of public companies who are coming out and trying to, create a Bitcoin portfolio, and they're all public companies, they're only doing it to boost their stock prices, not realizing the repercussions later on if anything goes south. They're only doing it because their companies were failing on the stock market, but they saw it as a way, creating a Bitcoin portfolio to boost their prices. They saw how MicroStrategy did it, and they thought, well, we can do the same. For some companies, it worked out on the public markets, essentially, to be fairly honest. They did tremendously well on their stock prices. For some companies, it backfired on their stock prices even more. JP Morgan also essentially noted that the passive inflows are helping Bitcoin. This is happening as more companies are holding Bitcoin in their public indexes. For instance, Strategy, previously called MicroStrategy, was included in major benchmarks, while Japanese firm Metaplanet was recently upgraded into the FTSE Russell Mid-Cap category, which led to its inclusion essentially of the FTSE All-World Index. Moreover, corporate competition to accumulate Bitcoin is also increasing. The Nasdaq listed essentially candidate MD, which we discussed earlier on the live show, regarding their essentially $5 billion acquisition. Meanwhile, Adam Back's company, 21 Capital, is also working to challenge Marathon Digital's position as the second largest corporate holder of Bitcoin, ranking behind Strategy led by Michael Saylor. According to JP Morgan, these changes are helping Bitcoin to look undervalued compared to gold. The bank's report suggests more growth could come if these trends continue. I said this and I'll say it again. Bitcoin is not cheap for a retail person. For an institution that has billions and endless deep pockets, sure, it's cheap. I'll give you that. But when regular folks, essentially when regular people read essentially news articles like this or reports from JP Morgan like this and think to themselves, Bitcoin is cheap, it's really not. Yes, Bitcoin can reach higher price points, no doubt about it, due to its cap supply, even though BlackRock once argued that its cap supply could be increased if everyone on the Bitcoin network is on the same page. But putting that argument to one side, Bitcoin is not cheap for the retail section. It still may remain cheap for the institutional section, but nowhere near cheap for the retail section. So please do not buy into this BS that JP Morgan is trying to sell to everybody, where Bitcoin is cheap and trying to get retail money into Bitcoin. In my point of view, it's not worth it. If you're a retail person, it's not worth it to invest in the Bitcoin at all. I said this a long time ago, and I'll still stand by it. There are other projects you could go for the same value of money that you have, based on quantity, based on legitimate crypto projects. And projects like XRP, XLM, XDC, HVAR, AVAX, Link, Cardano, Solana. There are so many projects out there that you could pretty much go towards based on the budget that you have, and you could get so much more out of it in the long term than you could do on essentially trying to buy this much of Bitcoin, to be fairly honest. So, and it is, quite interesting that a firm or a bank like JP Morgan, who called everybody who holds Bitcoin a criminal and decided to say, I will arrest them myself in front of essentially senators when it came about Bitcoin, now making essentially announcements of Bitcoin is too cheap, everybody should jump on it. No. Honestly, the only people that will be buying Bitcoin now from the retail section, if you don't have a lot of money, are morons. Because intelligent people will go for altcoins essentially that bring more utility to the table in the long term. Now, Fed is what we're going to talk about next. Fed member Cook. Everybody knows who she is. She is the person Donald Trump decided to remove or fire from the Fed for fraud allegations of mortgages, essentially. And she's decided to sue Donald Trump in a way, or Trump's administration. Fed member Cook, Lisa Cook, fired by Trump, files a lawsuit against the decision. The Federal Reserve Board member Lisa Cook filed a lawsuit today challenging President Donald Trump. Imagine that one. A member of the US, essentially Fed, is suing the President of the United States, thinking she could win, even though she did commit essentially mortgage fraud, to be fairly honest. Trump's decision to remove her from office, Cook argued that the White House lacked the authority to do so and insisted she wanted to keep her position. I'm sorry, you committed mortgage fraud. As a member of the Fed, who is supposed to be, an outstanding member of the community, for the little guy, transparency, credibility, those are the words that apply to Fed members. Or those are the words that used to apply to Fed members, to be fairly honest. And she committed mortgage fraud. And now she's arguing that Trump had no right of removing her, even though she did commit mortgage fraud. I mean, could you find more entitled people honestly, everybody that was, supported and chosen by Biden's administration are incredibly entitled people. Cook's lawsuit filed in the U.S. District Court in Washington called the dismissal unprecedented and illegal. Cook described Trump's move as an attempt to put political pressure on independent Federal Reserves to cut interest rates. I agree 100%. What she has said there is not a lie in any sort of a way. Yes, Trump and Trump's administration wants rate cuts. In fact, everybody in the United States of America, everybody in the world that has brain cells and is inside the crypto sector wants rate cuts. So we all stand with Trump on that matter. Everybody wants rate cuts. We've had enough of the Fed acting like some 6-year-old child that just doesn't want to essentially do their job, to be fairly honest. Because I'll be honest, Jerome Powell is acting like a child. And he isn't doing his job, and it's on the basis that he hates Trump and Trump hates him. It's very obvious they both hate each other. But one of their actions is affecting us also, not just Trump. And that's Jerome Powell's actions. So yes, I agree 100%. Trump's administration and Trump are picking on her and anybody else inside the Fed because they want rate cuts. But they're not picking on her for no apparent reason. She did commit mortgage fraud. So I would fully understand if she said Trump is picking on us because we won't do rate cuts and is trying to put pressure on the Federal Reserve and I am innocent. I would agree with her. But she committed mortgage fraud. So she's not innocent. And yes, he might be picking on you, but you still committed mortgage fraud. This case is seen as the start of a critical legal process for the future of the Fed. An independent institution is why they're going with. We know for a fact where the Fed stands. Trump has long criticized the Fed and has taken steps to appoint people who share his monetary policy views. The Trump administration is, by removing each member of the Fed, they're replacing them with people that are pro-crypto, pro-interest rate cuts, and stand with Trump's vision. Cook also named the Federal Reserve and Chairman Jerome Powell as parties in the lawsuit. So Jerome Powell has decided to join Cook in this lawsuit by going up against Trump, citing their authority to implement Trump's essentially directives. In a statement about the lawsuit, the Fed stated that it would comply with the court's decision. Trump announced his dismissal of Cook in a letter shared on social media 3 days ago. The president claimed Cook was involved in mortgage fraud and claimed, essentially, he was exercising the power of removal enriched in the Fed's charter. However, Cook was not charged with or convicted of any crimes, but she still did commit a crime. Just because she wasn't convicted of a crime doesn't mean she didn't still commit the crime. Experts have raised serious doubts about the legal basis for Trump's decision. The lack of evidence and the fact that the allegations predicted Cook's tenure at the Fed have fueled essentially the controversy. Furthermore, the fact that Cook was dismissed without a chance to defend herself has been deemed legally problematic. Cook's lawyers have filed a 24-page brief arguing that the impeachment would weaken the safeguards granted under the Federal Reserve Act and that Trump violated Cook's legal rights. He is the president of the United States, and his only worry should be protecting American citizens from morons. Is exactly what he's doing. The filing argued that the mortgage claim in question did not fall within the law's inefficiency, neglect of duty, or abuse of office. Interesting. So a member of the Fed commits mortgage fraud. According to the Fed, that's okay. If a regular person who didn't work in the Fed, who wasn't a government employee, committed mortgage fraud, do you think the government will turn around and say, it's okay, it's only mortgage fraud? This is when I say these types of people that were, who still stand with Biden's administration and were chosen by Biden's administration are very entitled people. How can the Fed turn around and say, that's okay? I mean, it was only mortgage fraud. It's not a big deal. But if a regular person committed mortgage fraud in the United States, it could come with a massive fine and even possibly a prison sentence. But if a member of the Fed does it, according to the Fed, that's okay. It's not a big deal. It's just mortgage fraud. At the heart of Trump's allegation is that Cook listed 2 different addresses at essentially their primary residency. But the lawsuit also provides, apparently according to their words, the Cook lawyers, no clear explanations of this. Honestly, it's like living in a reality TV show when it comes to these politicians. Genuinely, it's like living in a reality TV show when it comes to when you watch these politicians. Committing mortgage fraud, according to the Fed, not a big deal. But if a regular 9-to-5 person did it, it would be massive fines and possibly a prison sentence according to how much mortgage fraud was done. Now, CFTC is what we're going to talk about next. They're doing something interesting that's going to be taking a step further inside the crypto space, not just inside the United States, but on a worldwide basis. The CFTC, led by Caroline D. Pham, unveiled a new framework to allow US users to trade spot crypto on registered exchanges, advancing regulatory oversight. This initiative could significantly influence market transparency and institutional confidence, aligning with the SEC's efforts to modernize digital asset regulations in the US. So the CFTC is taking a step further in regulating the crypto market space, regulating crypto exchanges to be more exact, not just inside the United States, but on a worldwide global basis. The Commodities Futures Trading Commission, CFTC, has proposed a new framework allowing US citizens or US users to trade cryptocurrencies on designated exchanges. This initiative is a part of CFTC's essentially crypto spirit, aimed at integrating assets like essentially Bitcoin, Ethereum, Sol, and XRP for essentially into their arrangements. CFTC's acting chair Caroline Pham is spearheading this move right now. The strategy involves leveraging existing essentially futures exchanges, such as the Chicago essentially exchange. It aims to facilitate immediate trading of digital assets at federal levels. The proposed framework is expected to enhance market transparency and compliance. It intends to offer regulatory clarity, potentially increasing US trading volumes on regulated platforms and affecting leveraged spot instruments. The CFTC is trying to regulate crypto exchanges, not just inside the United States, but for all US users worldwide when it comes to crypto exchanges. So in other words, they're going to be telling you which crypto exchanges are good to use and what are not good to use, and the ones that are good will get some sort of a green tick, let's just say, for example, for American essentially users to feel safe using these particular exchanges. This framework might narrow the basis essentially of risk between spot and future pricing, boosting also institutional confidence. It underscores a broader drive to foster innovation by reducing regulatory uncertainties for cross-border market participants also, because it's on a global basis, this regulation trying to pass through. Historically, efforts essentially similar to SEC's ETF approvals have been made. The current proposal marks a significant shift towards spot contracts in the US. This move could potentially tighten and essentially spread margins and essentially stabilize volatility in selected tokens. The CFTC's integration of spot cryptocurrencies promises to influence US digital asset markets. It aligns with previous jurisdictional essentially standards, aiming to attract new institutional investors while working closely with other agencies on a cohesive regulatory approach. Caroline D. Pham, acting chair of the CFTC, emphasized transparency and accountability are essential to support market integrity and protect investors and enforce compliance and allow innovation to thrive within a clear federal regulatory framework, according to her words. Honestly, incredible, to be fairly honest. Absolutely incredible that the CFTC is taking steps like this inside the market space. It's going to add credibility towards cryptocurrencies, especially spot cryptocurrencies, and the essentially exchange of the Chicago exchange, which is essentially Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, and Solana on that list, essentially. Incredible news, incredibly positive news. Great to see the CFTC is taking further steps inside the crypto space, not just for the US citizens, but global, but essentially is on a global sense for American citizens also. Now, moving on from the CFTC actually taking footsteps, because they did announce they became crypto friendly, but we haven't seen them take any footsteps so far. This is their first footstep on, bringing more credibility towards the blockchain space. To El Salvador. Now, everybody knows El Salvador is, the biggest lover when it comes to Bitcoin. They have been since day one. They were the first country to pretty much be invested into Bitcoin. Well, they've came out with their essentially new targets. Bukele targets $1 billion Bitcoin stash for El Salvador. El Salvador's pro-Bitcoin stance continues to dominate headlines as President essentially Bukele dropped a major hint that in a recent post, he suggested that the country's Bitcoin stash could soon hit the $1 billion mark. A bold step that reinforces El Salvador's commitment to crypto adoption. This isn't the first time Bukele has publicly championed Bitcoin. Since making it legal tender in 2021, El Salvador has steadily increased its holdings through daily purchases, mining, and citizen-led adoption. The president's latest essentially tease is more than just hype. It's a signal to global markets that the nation is playing a long-term game with the world's top cryptocurrency. If El Salvador essentially hits the $1 billion target, it will solidify its position as the most crypto-forward nation in the world. For a country of just over 6 million people, this move would significantly increase its financial sovereignty and international visibility inside the crypto space. According to public data, El Salvador currently holds over 5,700 Bitcoin, which essentially at current market prices is estimated over $400 million. A jump to $1 billion would require either significant Bitcoin price surge or further accumulation, or essentially further purchases from essentially El Salvador, or even both. The crypto community responded with enthusiasm, Bukele's messages being seen as a bullish signal not only for Bitcoin, but for the wider crypto adoption. Investors and enthusiasts also essentially are closely watching how El Salvador's crypto experiment plays out, and if other nations will follow in suit. El Salvador's unwavering strategy could inspire similar moves by other emerging economies looking for alternatives to traditional financial systems. What El Salvador is doing, I hope it works out brilliantly for them going forward, to be fairly honest. But it does seem like they want to compete with the bigger players, especially with Dubai's recent announcement that they've been mining Bitcoin. The royal family of Dubai, one of their royal families, has been mining Bitcoin. They've reached $700 million of Bitcoin. El Salvador today announcing they want to reach $1 billion to be able to compete with the bigger, essentially whales or bigger countries out there or big corporations. Now, next news we're going to go for on tonight's live is regarding Tether. But before we talk about Tether, let's go start the conversation first. As I said previously, this is live, as always, which means if you do have any questions or statements, put them down in the comment section. I'm more than happy to help you out. So let's go start the comment section first before we go through the next news on tonight's live. Evening, Miles, CMF. David, good to see you. How you doing? Because we good to see you as well. Ray, let's go. So you're saying I get to get rid of Donkey Camel to read that one. Peg, let's go. Like and retweet this live. Facts. CMF members, if you've already liked and retweeted this live, thank you so much for liking and retweeting. If you haven't, drop a like and drop a retweet as well. Hi, Miles family. Alex, good to see you. How you doing? No, how you doing? Miles, can you please remind us this important date for XRP in September? Call for XRP. Okay, in September, there's two things happening. One is on the basis that we might be seeing a rate cut from what Jerome Powell's last speech was at the Jackson Hole. As I said previously, it could possibly just be that, Jerome Powell's last speech at the Jackson Hole giving some hints that a rate cut is happening in September. I said if we go into September and we don't see rate cuts happening in September, then that's okay. The market will be negative for 24 minimum hours, maximum 48 hours. And then I said the market needs something to push it back up. The market needs bad news to push it down, good news to push it up, and in between the house wins. So towards the end of essentially September is going to be the Clarity Act, which they have to give a second round of voting to because they made some amendment changes. The Clarity Act is going to have very great essentially a lot of positive things that will be coming out of the Clarity Act because it tells the CFTC and the SEC what they can and what they can't do. It gives clarity towards institutions and banks inside the United States and also even foreign investors on what they can do inside the crypto space in the United States. So it's going to have positive impacts on XRP and the rest of the crypto space, to be fairly honest. So that's towards the end of the month, of next month. Now, Tether. Tether to launch, and it's just a signal that we're going towards utility. The Clarity Act is what we need as a signal to go towards utility. Tether to launch USDT stablecoins directly on, this might be not the most brightest idea Tether's ever had. It might seem like a bright idea to Tether themselves because they can intertwine themselves even more with this chain. It's Bitcoin. Tether has decided to launch USDT stablecoin directly on the Bitcoin network. According to Tether's announcement, The rollout will be through RGB, a protocol that allows digital assets to be issued directly on Bitcoin. With RGB now live on the mainnet, USDT will no longer be limited to networks like Ethereum, Solana, Tron, or Ton, where it has traditionally circulated on. Tether is trying to intertwine itself even further into Bitcoin so that when the time comes, it's going to be difficult to detach Tether from Bitcoin. That's the only reason why they're doing it. So they're so intertwined with Bitcoin, it's just going to be hugely difficult to detach both of them from each other if they're going to be so connected together. For years, essentially, investors wanting to purchase Bitcoin with USDT had to rely on stablecoins issued on other blockchains, transferring them through centralized or decentralized exchanges by bringing USDT directly to Bitcoin. Tether says users will be able to transact seamlessly on the world's most secure decentralized network. The integration is expected to strengthen capital flows into Bitcoin markets by removing friction points, potentially making it easier for investors to acquire Bitcoin without leaving the network. Analysts suggest that this could become a bullish driver for the cryptocurrency's price over time. Tether described the move as unlocking a new frontier for money on the Bitcoin network. The company highlighted that users will be able to hold and transfer both Bitcoin and USDT within the same wallet, combining Bitcoin's security with USDT's price stability. The launch essentially marks the first time that the world's largest stablecoin will exist as a native asset on Bitcoin itself, expanding the network's functionality in payments and trading. Tether is trying its best that because we're going into such a restrictive, regulated crypto space going forward, that it knows that it's been kicked out of the market space regarding Europe. It knows it's going to be rejected in the United Kingdom. It knows it has difficulties in Canada. And the only places that Tether operates freely is in Asian market spaces and Latin American countries, and even in the United States for the time being. But as the rules get stricter, Tether knows it has no place. So what does it decide to do? Attach itself and embed itself into Bitcoin as much as it can. This could do two things. One, it's going to get very difficult to detach those two from each other. Two, it's also going to be quite easy for criminals to be able to just purchase Bitcoin whenever they want on the Bitcoin network using USDT. So it's just going to open up door for crime and also make it difficult to detach those two. Now, there is a third scenario as well, where if Tether ever gets sued for not having the amount that they essentially say they have to back their token with, which some people might say, oh, it's just a hoax, never going to happen, or so on. Tether has paid a fine once in a New York court for lying about what's backing their stablecoin. So it's not the first time Tether has been found guilty. USDT has been essentially found guilty of lying. They have actually been found guilty. There was an actual lawsuit about it. They paid a fine for lying what's backing their stablecoin, because what they said was backing it wasn't really backing it. So it was an empty stablecoin, you could say. So they have been fined before, and they've paid that fine off as well. So the third scenario is if Tether does this and intertwines itself so much with Bitcoin, and then somewhere down the road it gets revealed that Tether has been printing out of thin air and is not really backing his asset as they say they are, that's going to have major issues regarding Bitcoin if Tether is going to be so intertwined with it. So let's see how that one plays out. Because I'm guessing to Tether, this seems like a brilliant idea. It's going to get difficult to detach Bitcoin and Tether now because they're going to be so intertogether. Later on down the road, Tether still essentially having difficulty showing transparency. The EU wanted USDT to be transparent and hold certain of their essentially assets in EU banks just in case they depeg or something happens, and the Tether rejected it. USDC didn't reject it. That's why Circle was accepted in the EU. But let's see how that one plays out, Tether. To Tether, it probably seems like a genius idea. Now it's going to get difficult for us to be detached from Bitcoin and so on because we're on their chain. but it could also backfire when they don't have what's going to be backing their token. Because as I said, Tether has lied, and they paid a fine in a New York court for lying about what's backing their stablecoin, because they were printing USDT out of thin air up to a certain extent, and they lied about what's backing it, and they paid a fine in a New York court, and the case just vanished. So this could be very stupid or very intelligent move for Tether. It could go either way. If it's very stupid, it's going to backfire tremendously. And I guess BlackRock and the other companies that are going to be investing in Bitcoin are not going to be very happy with Tether if that ever does happen. I'll be honest, the CEO of Tether has to disappear on an island somewhere to get away from BlackRock. Now, America is what we're going to talk about next. American Bitcoin is what we're going to basically talk about next. Let's go inside the comment section first before we do go through the next news on tonight's live. Thanks, Miles. Great and explicit recap. No problem, Carl, at the time. Rowan says, do you see another big dip coming before the parabolic rise, in your opinion? Or have we fallen enough? The market could always be impacted in a way to fall even more, to be fairly honest. Let me give you a little update about also what's happening on the sidelines. Israel and Iran's war is picking back up. So here is something that you don't know, or some of you might know if you've heard it on the news recently. So this is what's happening. This could have implications on the stock market in terms of oil prices and energy prices. It could also weigh into the crypto market section. So the UK, Germany, France and a few other countries have signed something. And the Shah of Iran has also released this document on X, if anybody hasn't seen it. And with the US, they are about to put the same sanctions that was on Iran before. So Iran is about to get extremely heavily sanctioned and deprived from the rest of the world, which has made Iran's government very angry, because it's about to be imposed with extremely heavy sanctions, which could cripple the Iranian government, because their economy is going to go belly up and collapse pretty much. So Iran has become very angry on that sense. And Iran said they're going to strike ships that go through essentially the Hormuz Sea. So any ship, that oil ship, gas ship, whatever, 20% of the world's essentially energy goes through that, essentially goes through the Hormuz. 20%, 30% of the world's energy goes through the Hormuz. So Iran said, if Germany, France, the UK, the US are about to put the most strongest and heaviest sanctions to be ever put on a country on Iran, then Iran is going to strike any ship that goes past the Hormuz. Also, America, Trump, has got a army naval essentially ship also placed there as well at the Strait of Hormuz, just in case Iran does send out missiles. Now, if Iran does strike any of those ships, and it only depends on the heavy sanctions that's about to be placed on Iran's government, if they do strike, then that's going to cause a ripple effect inside the market space. The stock market is going to be impacted, and so is the crypto market space on that sense. So on the question of, do you see another big dip coming before that parabolic rise? Could we see something else, make the market dip? Well, that's about to happen. On top of that, Israel has said they're going to get ready to strike Iran again. So not only are these countries about to put the heaviest sanctions ever on Iran, which has made Iran angry to strike ships that go past, they're also Israel is about to be getting ready to strike Iran again. So that is brewing up again. If Iran does strike any oil or gas ships or so on, that's going to cause major effects on the stock market. It's going to weigh into the crypto markets as well. So keep that in mind. That was all announced today, by the way. Now, let's go more inside the comment section. When Tether goes down, so will Bitcoin. Bitcoin is propped by fake Tether. I agree, Davey. I agree. Hi, Miles and CMF. Stormy, good to see you. Why you doing, Ivan? Good night, Miles and CMF. Thanks for great news. See you tomorrow. Free and forever. See you tomorrow. But sometimes usual. Tether is going to be a downfall of Bitcoin. By the looks of it. Now, American Bitcoin, the company owned essentially by US President Donald Trump's son, is preparing to be traded on the Nasdaq stock exchange. So American Bitcoin is about to go public, founded essentially by the US and essentially and co-owned by Donald Trump's son, Eric Trump, and Donald Trump Jr. is preparing to go public. The company operates in the crypto essentially mining space and is about to complete a stock merger with Griffin Digital Mining to speed up the process. Asher, the CEO of Hut 8, the largest investor in American Bitcoin, stated that the merger will be completed shortly after the company essentially will begin trading directly on the stock exchange in early September. Without initial public offering following the new formation, the company will trade under the ticker symbol ABTC. So if you are somebody that holds crypto and stocks, this could be something to look into once they do go public. Both Trump's sons are essentially a part of this project. It could have some potential. It's in the Bitcoin mining essentially facility or crypto mining in general. And the ticker is going to be ABTC. They're about to go public. The investor base includes prominent figures in the crypto industry. Gemini Exchange founders Cameron and Tyler are essentially among the principal investors. It was announced that Eric Trump, Donald Trump Jr. essentially, and Hut 8 will collectively own 98% of the company once the merger is completed. He also emphasized that the opting for a merger rather than a direct initial public offering, such as IPO, would be more advantageous from financing perspectives. It also stated that the company could invest not only in the US but also internationally, offering investors access to Bitcoin through exchanges. Founded in March, essentially 2025, American Bitcoin plans to accumulate Bitcoin through both mining and direct purchases. It will operate by leasing Hut 8's data centers. This move, essentially, which comes as Trump's administration is ramping up crypto regulations, has raised allegations of political influence and conflicts of interest. However, they have also stated that the company is completely independent and commercial enterprise, and that Eric Trump is involved in strategic areas only, and it's not influenced by politics whatsoever. Even if it is, who cares, to be fairly honest? The Biden administration were filling their pockets with their political motives. I mean, for crying out loud, some of these Democrats, essentially Maxine Waters or essentially Senator Elizabeth Warren or Nancy Pelosi, their portfolios have outperformed hedge funds. So the idea that Trump's family is profiting on cryptocurrencies, if that doesn't really bother us, to be fairly honest, because we also profit from the crypto space as well when Trump's family's profit from the crypto space. Unlike the previous administration where they only profited, at least in this administration, if the Trump family profits, we can also profit as well. So I'll be honest, the retail section shouldn't care too much about Trump's family making money on the stock market or the crypto markets, because if you're smart enough, you can make money alongside the Trump family inside the crypto market as well. Now, moving off from that to Ripple. Ripple's CTO defends XRP against centralization claims aimed BlackRock comparisons. So once again, the age-old topic of essentially Ripple is centralized, essentially XRP is centralized, and that it's not decentralized, and that nobody should go towards it, is what the Bitcoin maxis have been saying for the longest time, and they're still not giving up, which made David Schwartz come out on X and make these announcements. So, Ripple's Chief Technology Officer, David Schwartz, has responded to rising concerns over centralization assumptions targeting XRP after online discussions compared its market capitalization with BlackRock. They're comparing Ripple to BlackRock. Schwartz argues that the essential description of XRP as a centralized venture capital project is inaccurate and fails to take into account the way governance works on all public blockchains. He clarified that the participants of the network, such as Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the XRP ledger, can jointly decide to change the rules should consensus be reached. This, he said, is not solely a property of Ripple in architecture, but is common to decentralized systems. Schwartz noted that the disputes over blockchain governance often lead to essentially forks, giving communities the chance to adapt differently in terms of rules. Token holders also may benefit at their essentially assets duplicate on both chains, potentially expanding their transaction capacity and use cases. However, he warned essentially that in reality, folks do not intend to bring the essentially promised gains. the forces of the market typically tend to drive the value and user activity to a single chain and leave essentially other freeable regardless of its initial expectations. In addressing essentially the misconceptions about decentralization, Schwartz emphasized that this distributed essentially systems can still approve harmful rule changes. In the case of sufficient essentially consent and censorship and other forms of modifications, it might be applied regardless of individual dissent. He also explained that there is no central control over protection against proactive updates. The authority is entirely communal and the results are expression of mass agreements instead of promise of good development. Schwartz pointed out that the governance challenges are not uniquely to essentially XRP Ledger, but are common across all major blockchain networks. His remarks countered the allegations that Ripple is directly controlling XRP's decision-making. There's both sides. Essentially, XRP, just like any of the blockchain, has essentially the public census of everybody come to some sort of a conclusion. Obviously, Ripple will always try to protect the XRP ledger in their best interest as well, but the people still have a choice, essentially an opinion, a voice on the XRP ledger. He pointed out that Bitcoin and Ethereum, the XRP ledger, is dependent on the agreement of its participants that determine the future. And essentially, the acquisition of centralization and dominance misrepresents how the system functions. Schwartz's response underscores that decentralization does not ensure immunity from negative changes. Fork mechanisms provide flexibility, but market forces ultimately essentially determine which chain or governance path prevails. The idea that Ripple is protecting the XRP ledger is not supposed to be seen as a bad thing. It's supposed to be seen as a good thing, especially going into a quantum world, to be fairly honest. But the idea that essentially, XRP is completely centralized, no, there is essentially decentralization within it. Essentially the blockchain space in general, there's always elements of centralization, as I've always said. Decentralization exists, yes, but there's always going to be elements of centralization in general. And that shouldn't be seen as a bad thing, depending on how it's going to be used. If it's there to protect the chain from a quantum, essentially computing world, then how is that a bad thing? Now, Ripple also. About 3 days ago, I revealed that there is a Chinese company, Powerhouse, that's decided essentially to use the XRP ledger, but there wasn't much information on it. There's about a few sentences, that's all I could share with you. Well, today I have more on that Chinese company. So, Ripple has just scored a significant victory in Asia, as one of China's most prominent financial technology companies makes a big move. The partnership adds Ripple's momentum essentially in Asia as Link Logis, a well-known fintech powerhouse, has announced it will move its trillion-dollar supply chain finance platform to the XRP ledger. And that's all I revealed about a few days ago on this live, because I don't have much more on it. WireWire, essentially a popular crypto monitoring account, announced today that Link Logis, has selected the XRP ledger to support its extensive supply chain finance ecosystem. The company operates a trillion-dollar platform and is now moving these operations onto the XRP ledger. They also state that the XRP ledger powering real-world assets, global payments, and trade finance is victory for XRP. The scale of Link Logis operation is already massive. For example, in 2024, the platform processed over essentially 20.7 billion RMB, which is equivalent to $2.9 billion, is how much they processed in 2024 in cross-border assets across 27 countries. Handling flows at this size requires a strong solution, and LogiLinks chose the XRP ledger to meet these demands for high throughput and instant settlements to be happening between 27 countries, $2.9 billion. Through this move, Link Logis will be able to place invoices and receivable directly on the blockchain by turning them into digital tokens. The tokenization process will enable businesses that work with Link Logis to trade and settle these financial documents more quickly with reduced risk. With each move tracked and protected on the blockchain, the collaboration with the XRP ledger could add reliability to trade assets. Both Ripple and Link Logis will now work together to roll out the Link Logis global digital supply chain finance application for the XRP ledger's mainnet. As a part of the plan, Linklogis will fully integrate its global platform into the XRP ledger, allowing digital assets tied to real trade flows to be issued and settled on-chain. After taking this first step, Ripple and Linklogis also plan to explore new ways of collaborating. These new areas could expand XRP Ledger's technical capabilities in enterprise-grade financial systems, including stablecoins, smart contracts for trading supply chain assets, and the use of artificial intelligence in conjunction with blockchain essentially in trade finance on the XRP Ledger. This development with Linklogis is a part of Ripple's rapid expansion inside the Asian market space. In South Korea, a custody provider called BDACS has launched institutional-grade XRP storage, which supports major cryptocurrency exchanges in compliance with local regulations. In Japan, SBI Holdings is preparing to list the Ripple's XRP stablecoin while also exploring the launch of a yen-backed digital token. Ripple is also backing innovation through their Web3 salon, where it provides grants up to $200,000 for projects built on the XRP ledger. With Linklogis now integrating essentially on the XRP ledger into one of China's largest fintech ecosystems, Ripple's technology could gain a deeper foothold in Asia's financial landscape. Although China bans domestic cryptocurrency activities, Linklogis can still apply blockchain technology to its global supply chain because using the XRP ledger for international leads. So even though China has got a domestic ban on essential cryptocurrencies, Linklogis can still use the XRP ledger for international basis, for international purposes also. Even though being banned domestically, they can still go international. 27 countries, Linklogis, China, massive fintech company, $2.9 billion was essentially what they did 2024. 2025, we don't know the numbers, obviously, because the year hasn't ended. But this is massive. This is the type of news we want to hear when it comes to XRP ledger. Not XRP ledger chosen for data storage for the government. That doesn't bring money to the table. That just congests the network of paperwork, to be fairly honest. So this is the type of news we want to hear. As I said at the beginning of the live show, the only times I want to hear the words XRP or XRP ledger, if it's going XRP ledger, tokenization, money. XRP ledger, bank, money. XRP ledger, institution, money. XRP ledger, government funds, money. XRP ledger, Fed account, money. XRP ledger, bank, money. That's the only times I want to hear XRP in the same sentence, not XRP data storage for paperwork. How in what sense would that add direct value? That's going to add indirect value, which is okay, but we really want direct value instead in the long term. On that note, we have reached the endings of tonight's live as well. This was episode 363 of the CMF Live, if you're watching this for the first time ever. The CMF stands for Crypto Miles Family. My name is Miles. You can tune to this live Monday to Friday, 10 p.m. London time onwards. And in this live, I talk about the most recent news regarding cryptocurrency, CBDCs, AI, politics, regulations, pretty much vital information for you to know about regarding the world completely transforming into a digital space. Let's go through the comment section first, obviously, before we do call it a night. Let's see where we're at inside the comment section before we do call it a night. Also, thank you so much to everybody who liked and retweeted this live. If you're watching this on X, thank you so much to everybody who liked, essentially, if you're watching this on YouTube. If you followed and subscribed, thank you so much as well. Let's see where we were at. We were at here. Sorry, I'm late. Mouse, I entered just the live now. Do you think it's going to be an ETF this year? I do believe so, yes, Harris. So I am late. A few minutes is better than none at all. Hello, Miles, and my CMF members. Scott, good to see you as well, brother. How you doing? What up, Scott? That's what Christopher said as well. Let's go, Stormy. Thanks, Miles. Awesome live. Have a great night, and see you tomorrow, same time. Let's go, Autistic. See you tomorrow, same time as usual. Thank you, Miles. Stormy. Let's go. See you tomorrow, same time as usual. Night, Miles and CMF. Paolo. See you tomorrow, same time as usual as well. Have a great night, Miles and CMF. Christopher. Let's go. See you tomorrow, same time as usual. Good night, Davey. Let's go. See you tomorrow, same time as usual as well. Great live. Like, share, and comment. Full support. Take care, all. Let's go, Ray. See you tomorrow, but at the same time as usual as well. Have you heard that the UK is investing into mobile morgues? Up to a certain extent, yes, I have. It's a very weird one regarding that. Hello, fam. It is advisable to go for a midnight. Is it advisable to go for midnight token, the Cardano one? If you want to, it's not fine. I wouldn't recommend. Not financial advice. Your choice completely. I'm not going for it. Share the live. Let's go, Scott. Great insights as always, Miles. You are very much appreciated. CMF, please show support for Miles and go to X and like and retweet outside the live and like on YouTube. Let's go, Shelly. Facts. CMF members, if you've liked and retweeted this live, thank you so much. If you haven't, please like and please retweet this live always, because it helps out a lot. And I do appreciate everyone who always likes and retweets the lives. Good night, Miles. Let's go, Mike. See you tomorrow, brother. Same time as usual. Shelly, thanks so much for that comment as well. And I'll see you tomorrow as well. Same time as usual. I will see everybody tomorrow, same timing as usual, 10 p.m. London time onwards for the most recent news for episode 364 of the CMF Live. So talk about the most recent news tomorrow. See everybody tomorrow, same time as usual. Everybody have a great day or a good night, depending on where you're around the world. Love you all. See you all tomorrow, same time as usual. Like, comment, share, retweet, follow, subscribe if you already haven't. If you have, thank you so much. See everybody tomorrow, same time as usual.